Okay, so we're still waiting for some more people to arrive. I will entertain you for this moment. Once again, if you want to start asking questions, you're more than welcome. There's a question mark at the top of your page and some icon beside it. Click on that. Click on the question Q&A button, and you can ask me questions, and I'll get back to you. Some other information, you can check out ediblealchemy.co. There's going to be more and more information flooding on the site soon. Lots about probiotics, fermentation, bacteria. So it'll be a good venture to get involved with. And today we'll be talking about ginger beer, to make your own ginger starter. Everything is very possible to do at home, which is the fun part. You don't need to really buy anything. There's zero investment pretty much. And you can get good bacteria into your system, which is what we'll talk about today. So just hold on a couple more minutes. I'm here. I'm Alexis.
Get started.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Welcome. So, I'm Alexis, and I'm with Edible Alchemy. I'm Canadian at this point, living in Berlin, in a very warm Berlin right now. And I want to tell you a little bit about Edible Alchemy, about probiotics, and how you can get started yourself, and why it's great to have probiotics in your system, and what this word actually means. So, Edible Alchemy is basically a fermentation Skillshare probiotics. What I do, what my job is to teach you what are good bacteria, what is yeast about, and why it's necessary to have these things in your system, in your gut. And what is your gut exactly? These are questions that people ask themselves. Why do we say follow your gut feeling? It's actually because your gut is your brain in a way. And when you have a healthy gut, you have a healthy thought process. So we'll talk more about that. I'm basically a bacteria barista, which means I'm brewing different kinds of things, ginger beers and soda pops, water kefir, whatever you can imagine, whatever comes with bubbles. Give you a small sneak peek introduction. You can make one of these yourself. So it's really beautiful. That's all naturally fermented. That's the bubbles coming from natural yeast and sugars. The yeast eating those sugars. So also a culture dealer in a way. So culture meaning these different bacteria and yeasts that come together. And I'm dealing with them, working with them to create a happy environment for these things. So my goal is basically to teach you that bacteria and yeast, they're great for you. Why are they great? What does probiotic mean? Probiotic is basically pro-life, good bacteria. And if you have good bacteria in your system, you're actually going to eat and take over those bad bacteria. So if people are having gut issues, this could be a great thing for you to have in your life. Fermentation is not only just a great food thing, it's very tasty. The taste gets stronger. If you've ever tried sauerkraut, if you've ever tried kimchi, you've noticed there's a very sour, tangy flavor that a regular cabbage doesn't have. This is with time. This takes time to do. Just like wine, you can't have it tomorrow. It takes time to make it, and you have a very distinct, special flavor. So in terms of the health benefits, you get a strengthened immune system, you have less bloating, you get a healthy gut, like I had mentioned. It's full of antioxidants, which means you're detoxing. So when you're having a lot of toxins in your body, Maybe it's great to have fermented foods to detox. This is a great way to do it. You're also speeding up your metabolism in a way, and this is great for people who are maybe looking for a way to have a healthier lifestyle. So in terms of your lifestyle, if you're a foodie, you can intensify the food flavor of whatever you're making. Fermented foods are not usually eaten in a whole plate. You could eat a whole plate of sauerkraut if you wanted. I would enjoy that, but normally you would have sauerkraut on the side or kimchi on the side. You wouldn't have an entire plate. That's because there's so much good bacteria in that small portion of food that you don't need a lot. You use it to cleanse your palate, actually, and you use it to intensify your entire meal, and also for that great digestion, which is so important to many cultures. Us in the West, we have an unrealistic expectation of how long our food can sit on the shelves. We see a jar of sauerkraut and it can be there, the expiry date 2020, and we think that it's okay for us. But in reality, it's maybe not that great for you. It's actually dead, it's pasteurized. And so my job would be to teach you how you can make your own, how you can create something that's living and something probiotic again. So you can also learn from your environment. Basically, when you're fermenting something, it's a product of what's around you. You have bacteria on you, on your skin, in you, in your gut, around you, it's in the air. And we have to learn and become comfortable with this idea that there, for every one human cell, there's 9 bacterial cells. So you're pretty much one big bacteria, and this is what I have to get you familiar with and to enjoy this process. This is a thing that scientists are actually discovering now. They're really getting into it, and I think it's fun for us to develop that. So in all, this is my very first webinar. I've never done one of these before, so please, I'm looking for feedback. This is what this webinar is for you to give me questions about your probiotic inquiries, about bacteria, about yeast, about fermentation in general. And I'm going to use this information to improve edible alchemy in the online space and reach out to further communities. So I'm really looking forward to your feedback, to your questions, and yeah, let's get started a little bit more. So there's different kinds of fermentation. There's wild fermentation when you're using these natural yeasts, which is what we're going to do today to make a ginger bug. And there's other cultured fermentation where you're inoculating something a little bit stranger. If you've ever heard of kombucha or water kefir or milk kefir, these are bacteria, they're colonies of bacteria and yeast that have come together symbiotically, and they're able to inoculate other things. You're able to make yogurt with the milk kefir. You're able to make a special fermented tea with the kombucha SCOBY, or a soda pop with the water kefir. But today we'll just do one that you can easily make, probably with ingredients that you have at home. Very, very easy. Why do you think fermentation is so cool? I think it's cool in many ways. Every culture around the world has something fermented. It is not my idea. This is something our forefathers have done for generations and generations past. So here in Germany, sauerkraut was a big thing. Kimchi in Korea, miso in Japan. You go to any culture and they have something that is fermented. This is not me saying this. This has actually been researched. There is not one culture that there hasn't been something found that is, one culture that hasn't been found that isn't fermenting something. So that's really fun for me as a traveler. I go to different places around the world and discover different fermented things. I'm also collecting different bacterias and bringing it to where I am. You know, that's what bacteria does. It's spreading, and so I'm kind of spreading these things, which is great. You need these good bacteria to spread, and in your flora, there's a lot of different sicknesses that are being fought by using probiotics. So we're living in this antibacterial age right now where doctors are prescribing antibiotics for everything. So when you're sick, antibiotics. When you're not feeling well, antibiotics. And what you're actually doing is you're stripping your body of the good and the bad bacteria in your system. And then you're getting sick again, and you're wondering, why am I getting sick so many times? It's because now your defense system in your gut is nil. There's nothing there to help you defend those bad bacteria that are coming in. So to get probiotics, to get good bacteria back in your system, making it yourself is probably the easiest and cheapest and very, very efficient way to do it. So there's lots of stories revolving around fermentation. You perhaps have heard of Captain James Cook. He brought his crew on his boat giant vats of sauerkraut with him, and he actually helped his crew stave off scurvy. Basically, by the acidity in the sauerkraut, it was able to keep it away, basically, scurvy. There's lots of vitamin C in there, vitamin D, vitamin B, and this is great for vegans and vegetarians who maybe are not getting these nutrients in other places. But fermentation is also great for vegetables that maybe we think are super healthy, that maybe we're not getting all of the nutrients we could be getting out of them. For example, kale. There's a lot of vegans around. I know a lot of them that think they're this super vegan, and they say, yeah, I'm the best vegan ever, eating raw kale salad, and they're actually not able to get all of those nutrients out of the kale leaf that they think they are. What's the problem is that the kale leaf is so dense, there's a lot of cell walls that are there, and your digestive system is only able to break down those cell walls so much. And by that time, when they're broken down to a certain point, it's out of your body, and you haven't actually digested or absorbed any of those nutrients that you think you have, or that we tell ourselves that we have. And actually, the best way to get those nutrients from kale is to ferment it. So it's basically going through a pre-digestion process for you, and then you're able to digest it yourself. So, and you're able to do that. So, example, for cows, they eat grass. We cannot eat grass and get these nutrients out of it. And they have 4 stomachs to be able to do that. So they're eating the grass, and it's basically fermenting in these 4 different chambers. And they're able to, by the end, absorb all of these nutrients and have a healthy cow. So I'm just going to explain quickly one more time, if people are dropping in now, how to ask questions. So there's the question mark at the top of your page, and you can ask, it's a question and answer, there's some space. So please feel free to start asking questions, and there's dots at the top of the page. So click on those dots, and then there's a Q&A. Click on that, and then start asking me questions, whatever you want. If you don't have this Google+, then you can also send me an email at alexis@ediblealchemy.co. No M, just co. And also check out the website, of course. So ediblealchemy.co. And so let's continue. Fermentation, it's also, it's a food preservation technique. It strengthens your digestive system, stronger flavor, all of these things. And what I'm going to show now is how you can make your own ginger bug. So essentially what a ginger bug is, it's not a ginger beer at this point. I will be able to send you a recipe of the ginger beer, how you can make one of those, but it's important to have the starter for it. So here I have an example of some ginger in water and sugar, and that's basically all you need. That's all your ingredients, and you can get this really high pressure, like I'm trying to squeeze this now, and it's basically a rock, this plastic bottle. Really important for things like ginger, which can accumulate a huge amount of carbonation to have them in plastic. There has been cases of explosions. There have been no recorded records of anyone dying of fermented foods. However, exploding jars and bottles are a case of danger. So it's so high pressure that if I open this, it will bubble. This is all naturally fermented. It's really beautiful. And I'm going to teach you how you can get one of these. All right. So that's one. I have 2. These ginger bugs I have here are probably a year old. And so once you have one going, you can have it forever, as long as you keep feeding it. basically all of my bacteria. I like children, they're like pets. It's a great sound, great bubbles. Now, basically, some roots like ginger and turmeric, curcuma, they have natural yeast on the skins. And so yeast eats sugar. Just like when you're making bread, you need to have some sugar in there to inoculate it. And for that yeast, so basically, let's get some supplies here. I'll show you what I'm doing. So all I have here, very simple ingredients. I have ginger, and I'm using this skin. It's very important not to cut all of that skin off. Now I just have sugar. I'm using raw sugar. You can use almost any kind. You can use the normal sugar. However, I like to use sugar with different minerals and nutrients in them because that also means that I'm going to be consuming them. So why not give yourself the best? And I just have water. Really, really simple. Basically, the yeast on the skin of the ginger is like the yeast on the skin of every fruit and vegetable. This is wild fermentation. When you have wine, when you have grapes in the store, you can see them in the store, or if you go to the vineyard, sometimes there's some white on the skin of the grapes. And you might think, oh, it's dirty, or maybe it has some pesticides on it, but that's actually yeast on the skin. And when you crush that grape open, now that yeast is able to get inside and eat the sugars on the inside, which creates, in turn, wine. That's why people are stamping all over the grapes and making wine with their feet to get those yeasts on the inside. So basically, I need these yeasts on the skin of the ginger. And you can do this also with turmeric. So what I would do is I'll use maybe half of this. Cut this in half. This is to start your own ginger bug. And I'm using a little jar. You can start with a little jar like this. It's just a really little one because it's just going to be a starter. And you can make it grow and grow and grow by feeding it. So I'm just going to cut the ginger into little slices, into little pieces, so that there's more surface area. The more surface area, the more the sugar can eat. So basically like a thumb or a couple thumbs of ginger would work in a small jar. Got a lot, so that's no problem. Now the problem is with some gingers that are not organic, they've been like radiated, and so if your ginger isn't working, if you've made your own ginger beer and you realize that it's not working after some days, it's probably because it's been irradiated. And so it's best to buy the organic stuff, even if it's a bit more pricey. So I just have my ginger in a jar, easy like that. Now I'll add some sugar. I would say like equal parts ginger to sugar to start. Something like that. Now, these yeasts on the skin of the ginger are able to eat that sugar. However, to get them all stirred up and mixed and start to eat, you need a liquid form, the water. It's really that simple. So I'd have something like that. You need to stir it up, or you can close it and shake it. And these guys love to interact with the yeast in the air. So there's yeast flying all over around us, and it wants to also interact with that. And to incorporate that yeast into there, it likes to be stirred. So I would put this somewhere in your house, in your kitchen, that you would see it every day, every time you walk in the kitchen, and just give it a little bit of a stir. So I would put a cloth on top, so it can still breathe, but your cat or bugs or anyone that's wandering around will not go in it. Let's do this. Right. So that's how you start your own ginger bug. Now, fermentation is not immediate. It's not going to start bubbling in 1 hour or so right now. This is something that takes a couple days, and it takes some care. So what you need to do every day at this point, when you're starting a ferment, the first days are the most crucial. This is when you're nurturing it. Right now, these ginger bugs that I have, I kind of let them do their own thing. I can leave them for a week, it's no problem. But this particular ginger bug, I need to feed it every day. So tomorrow, I would give it a little bit more ginger, a little bit more sugar, maybe a little bit more water. And every day I'm stirring it, just so it gets up. By the third day or fourth day, it could be bubbling. You will hear it. You will hear a little fizzing, and you'll know it's working. At this point, you can extend it. You can make it a little bigger. So let's have a question here. I'm going to answer it. So the question is, could you use maple syrup? I haven't tried maple syrup because you need the fruit, the glucose. That's what it's eating. And you could try it. I never say don't do it. There's always cautions against certain things like agave syrup. Stevia doesn't work because there's no sucrose, glucose in there. Maple syrup is, I would say, start with a sugar, start with something that has glucose in it, and then maybe experiment with maple syrup or use it as a flavoring. It's also expensive, so you never know if you want to use that right away. I would start with something like this first, usually. Honey is also a possibility, actually. All right, there's another question. Let's get to those questions. I keep continuing with this one. So I'm feeding this one for the first 3 days, a little bit, and you should hear it bubbling. At this point, you can start using it to make your own ginger beer. This is your starter. This is your bacteria now. As scary as it sounds, it's actually very friendly, and you will love it, and it will talk to you, and you can listen to it. It's a very friendly pet. So for that, I will show you using one of my ginger beers, one of my ginger bugs, sorry, this one. It's just the ginger, sugar, and water, and it's very, very carbonated at this point. I have it in plastic for that reason. I have a cap on it, so it's building up the carbonation. That's when, if you want the carbonation to be released and no alcohol to build up, you have no cap on it, and the alcohol will evaporate. So if I just have a simple bottle like this, I will make a soda pop, and you can use basically anything that has a sugar source. I'm going to add sugar to this one, and the yeasts and bacteria in this will be eating that sugar. So what I have for sugar sources, I have some of this red currant syrup that I had made at one point, and there is some natural sugar as well as some glucose. Now, I also have here some jam that I have made, and there is some natural sugar in there as well as some glucose sugar in there. And I could use this to make my own soda pop. So what you need now, you need some water because the syrup is quite strong, so I don't want to drink pure syrup. I will just pour it in a bottle, simple as that. And some water to make it not so sweet. At this point, it's just a juice. That's just red currant juice. Now to make it a soda pop, to make it bubbly and active, what I need to add is the starter. Great sound every time. And I don't really want all of those ginger pieces in there, so I would use a sieve. So I fill it up, some tablespoons, and leave it like that. I already see bubbles, which means it's already going to start eating in a way. And now, close it up and wait. So it depends on how warm your space is. The warmer it is, like it is here, it's really warm, it should start fermenting right now, and maybe by tomorrow I will already have carbonation built up. Maybe it might take 2 days, it depends how strong and active your ginger bug is. And once it's ready, put it in the fridge, it should be great. Now I have put it in a glass bottle, which I caution. You will see at the top, the cap will start popping open, popping up, and that's a sign of carbonation. A trick to do is to also put a piece of fruit, like a dry piece of fruit, such as a raisin, and the first thing it will do is sink to the bottom. Once your drink is carbonated, you will see it floating to the top, and once it's at the top, you will know, okay, it's carbonated. Be careful, and you might have a volcano opening. That's happened to us many times at Edible Alchemy. So that's basically how you can make a soda pop and how you can make your own ginger bug. And there's a recipe that will be attached at the end of this podcast or webinar. You will get a survey that you can fill in and sort of what you want to know from another webinar that I do. And also you'll get a PDF form of how to make your own ginger beer. I like mine spicy, so if you don't like it so spicy, maybe take off some chili peppers or so. And now I'm going to open it up to questions. So please feel free to ask me, and I'm going to start answering questions as they come in. So we have some. All right, I'm just a little bit blind here, so I'm going to read really closely the questions. All right, so the questions, how to do questions. If you want to ask me anything, I'm going to say it says one more time that you can go to the top of your page. There's a question mark, and beside it there's some dots there. Click on that icon, and there's a Q&A section there. And if you can't, because you don't have Google Plus or something, you can always send me an email, and I get personally back to you. So let's answer some questions. So someone, let's see, I'm in the process of making lemonade with lime juice and leftover whey from yogurt. This whey is basically when you're making yogurt, it's separating the milk into the curds and whey, like little Miss Moffat who sat on her top of eating her curds and whey. That children's rhyme, that's really when you're making yogurt, you have the thick part and the watery part. And the watery part is actually, if you're making real yogurt, it's probiotic also. And it's a great inoculator, great to use for making your own soda pops. So I'm debating what sugar to add, and I'm able to use honey sweeten, or will the honey affect the fermentation process? So I have been told that honey in some things like kombucha will not work, but I have experimented with it and I have had great success. When you add water to honey, it basically turns into a mead, and there will be a fermentation process. So by all means, experiment, try it. I believe you will have success with honey and whey. Those are great combinations together. So try it and let me know how it works, and let me know how the flavor is. I really like using honey for fermentation, or honey and garlic. These are great combinations. So let's keep going. What else? We have another question here. Is there a particular book of fermentation recipes that you've tried out and recommend? Yeah, totally. Using, of course, Sandor Katz's Wild Fermentation or The Art of Fermentation. There's plenty, a plethora of information there. Also, Sally Fallon, Nourishing Traditions. She uses whey. This is that water from the yogurt. And she uses that whey a lot to make different condiments, even to use for vegetable fermentation. So definitely check out her book. She's full of information. And like I said, I'm not a doctor, but there is a lot of scientific reports that support fermentation as a use of medicinal healing in a way. Let's see, another question. All right. You said, all right. You said that your ginger bug are a year old. Did you leave the original ginger pieces in there? I actually sometimes take them out. So yeah, it's a year old, but this is actually fresh ginger. But theoretically, when I started it, like these pieces here are probably 2 or 3 months old. But eventually you see that they're starting to break down. That's part of the fermentation process. Just like when you're making a sauerkraut, you'll notice that the first 3 days, your cabbage or whatever vegetables you're using are still crisp. And then after some days, after some weeks, after some months, they're getting softer. They're not going to stay that crispiness forever. That's because it's alive and it's always changing. And so when I see that these ginger pieces are breaking apart and breaking down, maybe I'll take them out and start with new fresh pieces, but always leaving a little bit of this liquid, which is the probiotic, the active part, in there to help inoculate the next batch. So that's the thing about fermentation, is you can always keep inoculating. Even with your sauerkraut, take some of that juice from the batch that you love, it's your favorite sauerkraut, and use it to inoculate the next batch. And you can have a similar tasting sauerkraut and also ensure that your next batch of cabbage and sauerkraut will ferment because it has those probiotics already added to it. So let's keep going. How much sugar would you put in a 1 liter bottle of water when adding some of the ginger bug? So it depends. It's all dependent on your flavor, basically. Often when I'm making a soda pop or something, I'm tasting it. I always recommend people taste as you go. Even when you're making sauerkraut and you're mixing all your vegetables together, taste it. How salty is it? For your soda pops, how sweet is it? And when it's sweet enough, sweet to your liking, then add your ginger bug. Now the thing is, it will actually be less sweet once it's fermenting. Like I said, the yeasts are eating sugar. So yeah, today it might be full of calories. People are concerned about how many calories they're consuming. But when you're fermenting and the sugars are being eaten and digested, the calorie count is getting lower, which also means that it's getting less sweet. Also means that it's getting more bubbly. So there's a lot of things that are going on when you're fermenting. And it's great, like it's a great way to get kids having less sugary but still bubbly soda pops and drinks. Kids really like that. So for 1 liter, depending, I make often like syrups or something with fruit and add them. But if you just want some sugar in there, maybe about a 1/4 cup per liter. That would be my solid answer, is a 1/4 cup per liter when you just add juice or something like that. You could add apple juice. Often for myself, apple juice is a little bit too sweet, and so I would water it down a little bit with some water and then add a ginger bug, and then you get sparkling Apfelschorle, German sparkling apple juice, which is nice. And let's keep going. What fruit is the best for your ginger bug or soda pop? This can be a million fruits. I really use what I have on hand. So if I have berries and I pick a lot of berries, maybe I'll add that to my soda pop. If I have apples, maybe I crush them and make an apple juice or something. It really depends again on what you have on hand and what you have. Bananas, I haven't really experimented doing banana juice, but I have made smoothies. You can add this ginger bug to smoothies, and the next day you'll have a bubbling smoothie. So if you want to add, like make a smoothie with bananas and peaches and maybe yogurt, then you can also add a little bit of your ginger bug and you'll have fizzing smoothie the next day or even within hours, depending on, again, how warm it is. So, how do you get a ginger beer with a strong ginger taste? So basically, this is the ginger bug. Again, it's not the ginger beer. To get the strong ginger taste, then you would make sort of like a ginger concoction, boiling ginger and water and some sugar and the spices of your choice. So the recipe that I'll send you will have like cardamom in there if you like it, allspice, cinnamon. I put chili peppers and some cayenne pepper because I really like the bite. And you boil that, and once it's cooled, so let's say I have 3 liters of this ginger concoction that I've cooked up. Cool it down, put it in bottles, and then add maybe some of my ginger bug. Then I close it up, close the bottles up, and wait. So again, I'm always going to caution, use plastic bottles, especially if you're beginners, or use the Roche bottles with the flip cap, because they're a bit more of a safety technique. I have had bottles of ginger beer. I had about 7 lined up, and they were all in plastic, thankfully. And I was away, came back and to my place, and I heard things thumping on the ground. I heard them rolling around. I said, "What is that?" And I went into the room and I saw all of these bottles rolling on the ground. And what had happened, the pressure built up so great that the bottom had actually popped out convex and they could no longer stand anymore. And so they fell on the ground. So that's really a testimony of how great the pressure can be in a ginger bug. Things like kombucha don't grow that great of a carbonation so quickly, so you don't have to worry about it. But the ginger is definitely a caution. You don't want any exploding bottles. So, any other questions? For the question thing, it's the beside it. So please feel free to check out the survey after. I'll send you a survey of this little webinar. Again, it's my very first time. And you can fill it out, tell me what you want to know. Next week I'll be doing another one on your choice, whether it's kimchi or water kefir or maybe a stranger culture like kombucha and how to do that. It's up to you. I will try to answer all your questions. I'm going to answer one more. We've got a question here. What do you think of mixtures of fruits and vegetables inoculated by the ginger bug? Which one do you like? I have done beetroot. I did a beetroot juice with carrot, and I loved inoculating it with the ginger. It was absolutely awesome. Also, lemon is really nice. The possibilities are really endless. If you think about drinking something, think about what's your taste. So I really like the beetroot. It's sweet in a way, but also earthy. Also gives it a great color. And so when you have fizzing, bubbling beetroot soda pop, they couldn't be more beautiful. It's almost an unnatural color how fuchsia it looks. So try it out. Try it out. All right, 2 questions. Do you worry about what kind of water you use? Is it regular tap water? Okay, this is a great question. Here in Germany, where I am right now, there's not so much chlorine in the water, so I'm not really worrying too much about the chlorine content. But chlorine basically is a bacteria killer. And where I'm from in Canada, we have a ton of chlorine in the water, and when you drink it, it tastes like you're drinking a pool. And so it's really important to use dechlorinated water. And there's different ways you could get that. You could simply buy it in a bottle, or you can take it from the tap and boil it for about 3 minutes. Then you must let it cool, and you can use this kind of water. Also, you can let it sit on the counter for about 24 hours, and the chlorine will evaporate. So it's really a great point. Don't use chlorinated water, especially people who are coming from chlorinated water users like Canada and the USA. So it's really important. You will find that either your ginger bug isn't working because of the water situation, or because your ginger is also radiated or something like that. So it's good to use bioproducts or things that are not irradiated. So great. And I think that is, let's see, question 2, sorry, another question. Being completely new to fermentation, I would worry I'm doing something wrong. How do you know you're growing the right bacteria? This is often a question. It's really important to have clean surfaces, basically. Fermentation, you don't need sterile surfaces like you do when you're canning vegetables. But you do need clean surfaces. So make sure your jars are clean, make sure your surfaces are clean. Your hands, basically just wash them, everything with hot soapy water. Fermentation, you almost can't go wrong in some ways. It's the safest kind of food preservation technique. So there have been, again, no reported deaths from fermented foods where there has been when you're canning vegetables. When you can vegetables, you can get botulism. Basically, you're boiling those vegetables or whatever you're doing, and you're killing all the bacteria, again, the good and the bad. And if anything can survive in that environment, it's going to be the worst of the worst, which is botulism, which is one of the most fatal foodborne diseases, illnesses. So be very careful that way. In terms of fermentation, they're good yeasts. You will hear it, you will see it, the fermentation process happening. And it's really not something to be scared of. That's why I'm here, to show you simple and easy ways to ferment things, and not be so scared of why these bubbles are forming. If you have fermented vegetables, why there's this white yeast on there. It's called cam yeast. It's also benign. It's also used in different flavors to have different flavors of vegetables. So keep joining me for these webinars, and I can make sure you have a safe and feeling safe journey into the fermented world of probiotics and bacteria and stuff like that. So I think that should be all for now. And you can, again, fill out the survey. Tell me what you would like to know. Tell me what else you want to hear from me in the future. And send me an email personally if you'd like to do that. Check out the website, ediblealchemy.co. Should I keep answering questions? Or there's another question. The questions are dropping in little by little. That's great. I'll answer another one. Is there a way to produce ginger beer with a high percentage of alcohol but not too much yeast? So you can basically, I have produced an alcoholic ginger beer. I haven't produced a really high percentage. I would say it's around 2.5 or about 3%. The yeast is a natural product of fermented foods, and you don't have to worry so much about yeast. If you want less, I would strain it. So you can see the yeast. Usually it's visual. Sometimes at the bottom, you can see this kind of stuff at the bottom. That's basically the yeast or like buildup away. And you can shake it up and you can drink it. It's not a big deal. Or if you don't want it, you can filter it out actually. So by taking a cloth, something like this, or a cheesecloth, a double cheesecloth, overlap it, and then pour it through something like a funnel, and you can pour it into a bottle, and you're actually getting rid of a lot of that yeast. So I often do that with my kombucha SCOBY because I get a lot of yeast build up, and I don't always want to see it, or I don't want to taste it because it has sometimes a bitter flavor. So try that out. Try to see it out. And let's see, is it possible to grow long? Okay, I already did that one. Yes, all right. So join me again next week. This really was my first webinar. It's funny to not have a live audience. I'm often doing workshops in front of lots of people who have questions, and I can see your face and I can see what you're thinking maybe a little bit. And so it's fun, it's a new thing for me. And please feel free to join me next week and tell me what you want to know and ask me more questions. So that's all for now, and see you next week, hopefully.